All right. Good evening, everyone. To those of you on the East Coast, good afternoon to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks for joining us. It's actually Saturday night with everything that's going on tomorrow. For many folks out there, tomorrow is Easter. So in lieu of that, we're going to do a pre-record versus a live recording of the DEBRIEF'D, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier chat. We will be doing a rundown of episode 3. And to join me, I have a special guest. So let me bring them aboard. The guests that I have, they are the founder of AwesomeCon, of Annapolis Comic-Con, Southern Maryland Comic-Con, Central Florida Comic-Con, Nerd Street Wrestling, StarCon Orlando, and After Brawl NYC. Without further ado, I'd like to bring on my guest host for today to talk about this third episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier, Mr. Ben Penrod. Let me bring him on. What's going on, Ben?
Not too much, man. How's it going?
Not much. All right. So for those of you out there, you know how this goes. Typically, I like to provide like a quick recap and some Sparknotes, and then afterwards, get into some nitty gritty of like, Easter eggs, some callbacks, and potentially what I like to call some Psych Evals of, what's going on with, many of our characters and their thought process going into this episode. So with that being said, quick, let me get myself here. Quick recap. But before I get into that, of course, guys, make sure that you like and subscribe this show. Helps us out a great deal. Make sure you give that thumbs up. And for any comments or anything that you want to share about, anything in regards to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or any theories, or just want to, run some ideas our way, make sure you use that hashtag Falcon Winter Soldier MNSU. So Falcon Winter Soldier, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. All right, so without further ado, let's hop right into what, like I said, what I like to call our Spark Notes. So just to give a recap of episode 2, man, it was a loaded episode to say the least. We had the introduction of John Walker. We had some background of, who he is, what his accomplishments were, and just to give you, just some background on who this newly minted Captain America is prior to his coronation, so to speak. We have the Flag Smashers. They do have a run-in with, I'll just to make it easier, I'll call it Team Wilson and Team Walker, but they have a run-in with both of those teams, which many of you have probably seen in much of the promotional material. We had an introduction of Isaiah Bradley, who was, for all intents and purposes, Black Captain America. Yeah. He was someone who was provided with the super soldier serum and was experimented on, and we learned that the mantle of Captain America is far more complicated than what we initially perceived. We get the lines drawn between Team Wilson and Team Walker towards the end of the episode. And of course, to close it out, we have a cliffhanger of Team Wilson deciding that they're going to go see Zemo to get leads as to what's going on with these Flag Smashers. So starting this episode, we have, up to this point, we've been, it's been alluded to, but we get a better idea with the GRC, so the Global Repatriation Council. We get an infomercial, which provides a nice contrast or an interesting contrast to what they really do and what they really execute in terms of the missions that they do, which we see with the new Captain America. We also go find out that because this mission doesn't really go according to plan, that they go off book, and they decide that they are, you know, more than likely going to follow a spy on Team Wilson. Team Wilson, of course, they run into Zemo and, you know, try to get their leads from him as to what's going on with the super soldier serum. In a very creative way, we get the escape of Zemo, and it brings us to
that was crazy, right? That was like crazy. I was like, wait, they're gonna do this?
Yes, yeah. So it brings us to Madripoor. It brings us to the scientist who is behind this serum, and it also leaves us on a nice cliffhanger that shares some DNA with the world of Black Panther as well. So with all that being said, as I said, this episode was awesome. But before I hop into like thoughts on this episode, one thing that I did want to share with you guys, those of you who are watching, that I didn't have a chance to share last week, was the idea that I realized that I didn't talk about what I thought of that episode 2. And for me, episode 2, while I appreciated what Marvel was trying to go for of quote unquote being woke, especially with what they did in Black Panther as well, I appreciated, you know, what they were going after. However, there was so much exposition and so much information that was divulged in that episode that I felt that, and I rarely say this, but that it should have been split into 2 episodes. One focusing specifically on John Walker, and then the other one focusing on Isaiah. So before we hop into that, you know, what did you think about episode 2? If we were just doing a recap of that.
Episode 2? Oh man.
Yes.
There was a lot that went on in it. I thought, shoot, I can't even remember everything that happened in it. It was like, I thought it was really good. I thought it was like really, you know, it had so much, and I thought they were really kind of digging in on what, you know, this show is going to be. You know, it was a lot of action, some really cool, you know, new characters. We got Isaiah. We got to learn a bit about John Walker and who he is, and you know, I really liked it. I was like, man, this show is like up there with WandaVision after episode 2. I didn't maybe feel that way after episode 3, but but episode 2 was real strong.
All right, awesome. So with that being said, I feel that since we've already gone over, you know, what transpired in episode 3, I feel that's a great segue to hop into some of the callbacks and some of the Easter eggs, which were pretty cool. I felt that I got most of them, but for those of you out there, you know, feel free if there's any other ones that you felt that I missed, or Ben, you know, feel free. I know, at least in terms of like callbacks, some cool things that we had was we had the score of the Winter Soldier. I guess you can call it basically, I guess, the score of Winter Soldier, even Zemo, that we had from Civil War when he first went back into that prison to confront Zemo. So that was like a nice little touch where they had kind of that musical cue. I was like, oh, cool. And then even with the Winter Soldier, those activation words that he tried to, you know, use when they first encountered each other, even though it was, you know, made clear that he was aware that Winter Soldier had been deprogrammed. But I mean, even outside of that, Ben, were there like a couple of you know, callbacks or like Easter eggs that you know, excited you or that you enjoyed?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of like, I don't know. I don't know that I catch a lot of that stuff. You know what I did see that like probably wasn't meant to be a callback, but I thought was really cool is that when oh shoot, when I can't think of her name right now. I'm just like blanking
Sharon?
out. Sharon. So Sharon is like fighting all these dudes, and it's like outrageous. They're fighting in a pile of storage containers, and she like takes this guy and she chokes him out with like this cool it's called a rear triangle choke, where she's got like her like leg, she's got like she's like pulling up his arm, and she's got like her legs wrapped around his neck, sort of, and it's that's the same move that that the Black Panther that he tapped out M'Baku with. That's like the same like MMA move.
Okay.
I noticed. I don't know. That was just like a really weird detail thing that I noticed. But
no, that's awesome, man.
But
yeah,
I don't know that that was necessarily meant to be a throwback. It's probably just like the choreographer, like, hey, this looks cool, but you know.
Hey, like, you know what, you say that, but you know, a lot of people laugh. I had some John Wick, what is it, deja vu, like in that whole scene where we have one of the informants, or like the informant broker, I guess you can say, for Zemo, you know, that after she was, you know, taken out, and like this bounty was put on, it gave me deja vu of like
that was
John
very
Wick.
similar. That was very similar to the
I
plot
was
of
like,
John Wick.
wow. I was like, I wonder if that was accidental. So no, I get you, man. Like,
Yeah.
I had a similar feeling, you know, in that regard. I mean, they had other nice features even outside of Madripoor. You know, speaking of Easter eggs, they alluded to Smiling Tiger. I don't know if they're ever going to even have him incorporated into the MCU, but it was cool that they, you know, even like acknowledged, you know, that character, as zany as that, you know, character is. And I mean, considering, you know, what we have now with like Thor and Guardians of the Galaxy, who knows, man? Maybe down the line, you know, we might you know, get that character. You know, stranger things have happened. But even a cooler thing is, you know, now the confirmation, and we've started to see this in a lot of Marvel, in the 2 Marvel shows now, of characters finally getting their moniker officially. So like even in this episode, where we just, up to this point, we've just been calling Zemo, you know, I think, if I remember correctly, I believe he's Helmut Zemo. So up to this point, he's never been called Baron Zemo. And now they finally, you know, acknowledged and said, called him Baron Zemo. Yeah, right. So like that part of it was cool for sure. But I know you were commenting on before. You said in versus this episode, because I felt the opposite way between, and it's not to say that episode 2 was bad. I just felt that they stuffed too much in that episode, and it could have easily been 2 episodes. But I know you had just commented just before of how this episode was. You didn't enjoy this episode as much as episode 2. So you know, what would you say the reason is for that?
I don't know. I just thought it was a little bit of a weaker episode. It seemed a little bit less serious, and it didn't seem like it had maybe the same like importance or quality. I don't want to say like not production quality, like that was fine, but it didn't have the same quality. It felt more like a TV show, whereas like all of WandaVision and I think even the first 2 episodes of Falcon and Winter Soldier were cinematic. You know, they felt cinematic. This felt a little bit more like a TV show, like, you know, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where, you know, it was good, but it didn't have that. It didn't feel like a movie. It didn't feel like the stuff really mattered a whole lot in that way. And it was like, you know, things were a little over the top. I felt like they're really they're working really hard to make us not like these flag smashers, like
and I believe that's a misdirect for sure. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they're like, oh, by the way, they're like, oh, just in case you like started to sympathize with us, we had to blow up this building too, just in case. And then you know, I thought breaking Zemo out of jail was like, what? I would have, like, if I was Sam, I would have just shot him. I'd have been like, oh, that's Zemo. Bam, you're dead. Like, it's problem solved. Like, I wouldn't have been like, hey, we should team up with this guy and be friends. Like, what? So, you know, I don't know. I felt like it was just a little bit silly, and like I don't even know what Sam was doing that most of that episode. He's just getting like, he's just kind of following along, just hanging out, doing whatever Bucky tells him to do. And so I don't know. It was a little off for me. Still good. I still liked it, but it definitely felt like it was the weakest of the episodes so far.
No, for sure. Like, and that's interesting you brought that up because now and look and think now that you're explaining that way, I can see how it would come across that way. So, like in that regard, yeah, it you could say that it if it could feel like even though it's this whole series is about the development of Sam and him, being able to believe that he is worthy of taking this mantle. Up to this point, he has very much been placed center stage and been able to kind of lead the story.
Yeah,
And this is probably the one episode where it didn't feel that way.
yeah,
But I will say, like, it did feel like even though he wasn't leading, it didn't, at least for me, it didn't feel like he was taking a back seat. It felt more like, which is, I know, to some degree what they're going for. Unlike the first two episodes where he felt like the main character and the person who was driving the story forward, this is probably the first episode where it felt like him and Bucky were functioning in terms of how they were executing the episode or utilizing the episode as more of a duo versus, one person being a sidekick and one person taking the lead.
yeah.
Um, so there's definitely something to be said, about that. Were those like the main things that you felt in terms of this episode that didn't really work for you? Which things would you say
Yeah, I mean,
worked for you?
yeah, I felt like the vibe. I felt like the vibe was just a little off. Like I felt like I was jumping into a different TV show almost,
Gotcha.
and it was like more of a. I don't know. It did have a little bit of that John Wick vibe, but like John Wick doesn't explain anything, which is cool. Like that's what they do. Like you just get thrown into action scenes in John Wick and different scenes, and you're just along for the ride and you don't question it. But that's not really the way the MCU works. So so that kind of made me like, I don't know, like
It
they
made,
just
made you
meet.
question everything
Oh
because
yeah, like I
because
don't know, like it
everything
just took me
you
out
don't
of it
know
a
what it
little
has
bit.
meaning.
Like they go meet this car in the middle of a bridge, but like how did they get that far on the bridge? Like they walked half the bridge. Couldn't the car like come the whole way? Or like what are we like, like that, like it looked cool. That's cool, but I don't know. That doesn't seem like that didn't fit the vibe of the previous episodes or anything else that happened in the
And
MCU.
see, that's the problem. Unfortunately, that's the problem. As much as people like shared universes, that is going to be that is a problem. That'll continue to be a problem. Going forward is the the downside of trying to make everything connected is that unfortunately people are going to question. I'm going to question a whole bunch of things. You're going to question a whole bunch of
Yeah,
things, and we're going to we're going to think about all these various details. Um, because we know that there are things there that's supposed to have purpose. So
yeah,
being able to just enjoy it sometimes where neither one of us or anyone watching it might not be able to enjoy it because like they're trying really hard to make sense of, okay, is this connected to this, or does this take meaning for something that's going to happen like 2 stories from now, or which I mean
yeah,
in one regard can be cool, but in another regard it definitely in situations like that brings us to situations where things just things you can seem out of place if they don't feel like they're
yeah,
a part of the main story.
yeah. And I think if they had set that tone from the beginning, I'd be okay. I'd be like, all right, let's do this. If we're just doing, John Wick action adventure style, Point Break, movies where I don't ask too many questions. But like we saw, we saw Sam get denied for a loan. We saw like, Bucky in therapy, and now they're just randomly in some, in the Mos Eisley Cantina in some fictional country. Like, oh, what are we doing? So anyway, I don't know. It was cool. It was just like I felt like the vibe was a little off, a little different than the previous episodes, and that was a little jarring. But I didn't hate it, but it was definitely not. I didn't like it as much as the previous ones.
Gotcha. So with that in mind, and I realized, we were up here talking about Sharon. I didn't even talk about like the reintroduction of Sharon Carter, which was a cool moment in this episode and what she's been up to. And thinking about some of and I'll switch gears a second over to, as I said, the Psych Evals. So like thinking about what's going on in the heads of our characters. I know. So last week I was the team, the folks that I had on, we were talking about what was going on with John Walker and him being a guy who is not used to losing, and how scary it can be if he finally fails at something. And we're starting to see the cracks appearing, especially in this episode. So what are your thoughts on that character and where his thought process is, so I should say, currently?
Yeah, I get the feeling that he's ultimately not going to be like a bad guy, and he's going to be important and he's going to be a good guy, but it's like, he's got a lot of character development to do to get to that point. And I don't think he's like evil, but I think he's just, he's put in this position and he's a different type of guy, which is really cool, because the key for him, for the fans to get behind this guy, is that he's got to have that development, and the fans have to be along for the ride. So like, we have to go and watch and like maybe not like him now, and then he's got to put in the work to get us to like him. And like, if they can pull it off, like, that would be so amazing. But if he had just come in and acted like Captain America, if he had acted like Steve and been like sort of this like super Boy Scout, nerd, and like, we would never like him. Nobody would ever like him. So he's got to kind of start from this position. And I like the fact that he can't, he's got a temper, and think about it. He's not the same type of soldier that Steve Rogers was. Steve Rogers, he was, not that he got to be a soldier before he was Captain America, but, he was in World War II, where you had to go over there. You had to fight this war. It was life or death. John Walker is not that kind of soldier. He's never fought in World War. He was never drafted. He didn't, he's fighting in these like, arguably pointless wars against civilian combatants. We're not in any formal wars with any other countries in John Walker's lifetime. So he's fighting civilian combatants almost entirely, because he's probably been fighting in the Middle East if he's in the military. So you got to think that's such a different perspective, and you have to come from such a different background. I feel like in Captain America's day, when he was a kid, damn near every young man joined the military, and that was just something that everybody did. But that's not the way it is now. And so John Walker's cut from a different cloth, and that personality is going to be, he's going to be a more aggressive personality. He's going to be, a little bit more, short-tempered than Steve was. And so, and also, Steve had the perspective of being, he was always like a nerd and a wimp growing up. And then that super soldier serum didn't change his personality. He was still, he was still this guy who had been bullied his whole life. And now he's stronger than every bully, but he doesn't take it back out on him or anything like that. John Walker doesn't, he's the same guy, and he's not, he doesn't have that before and after change. And so he's just a guy who was good at his job and got to be the Captain America after that. So, he's coming from such a different place. And I think I might be reading too much into it, but I think they're playing all of that into it.
No, for sure. Like, and one thing that I did bring up last week was the Marvel's tendency, or to say the tendency in the MCU for them not to follow their story arcs from the comics to a T, but still kind of using it as inspiration in a metaphorical or spiritual way. So, you know, with all the monikers that John has had in the comics, whether it's from Super Patriot to Captain America to US Agent, even though it may not seem that he is going through that arc, he actually is going through that arc, because with all the accomplishments that he had, he's in essence a super patriot, because he's like, you know, what you picture, he's already like what you picture is like the perfect person that has accomplished all these things. And then, you know, he becomes Captain America, and when he becomes disillusioned and gets the serum, because he, you know, wants to ensure that he doesn't fail, because he's not used to failing. He'll, you know, eventually become US Agent.
Is that where you think we're headed with, because, you know, they're eventually, I mean, I guess that makes sense that we might be headed there. I don't necessarily know if we want to speculate on the future episodes,
well, no, like for sure. Like, I guess, but before I hop into that, I wanted to touch on something that you just said, and you were commenting on characters like earning their way in that character development, because I feel that it also coincides with Helmut Zemo and his character, because we haven't seen him since Civil War, but much in the way of Loki and much of the way of all the other characters in the MCU that have Killmonger, that have worked. It's because, outside of being instead of being the mustache twirling villain, they have a reason as to why they are the way they are. And it's a reason that makes sense, that you empathize with. So, in that same way of everything that happened to Zemo, you understand where that anger and that rage comes from, and where that perspective comes from, especially when he talks about, the reason why there shouldn't be superheroes. You're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Even though he goes about it the wrong way, I'm thinking of like Magneto and all these other characters that, use flawed strategies or means to execute what they believe. You still feel for them, and you still follow along with them, because, you understand where they're coming from. So hopefully, like you were saying, that, that's what we're going to see going forward with John Walker, for sure.
Yeah. And then, I think with John Walker, I think it's a lot of it. It's up to the actor to really do great in that role. And I think he's doing great, but like, they got to really tell the story in a way that the fans will come around. And so, I think they can do it, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Cool. So before I hop into like theories going forward, there were some theories that I feel still carry over to this week's episode. So I'll ask you, Ben. One big thing that we talked about is potentially the identity of the power broker. Do you have any theories on that? I mean, we shared it last week, but do you have any guesses on who that might be?
And I feel like it might be a red herring. Maybe we're supposed to think, like, I'm skeptical of Sharon being the power broker. Like, I think that's, maybe that's too obvious, and they're just like faking us out. But I'm like, she's like shady as hell. So
yeah. I know. Well, I believe you that I think that they are doing that as a misdirect. The theory that we had, and it obviously may not even end up being true, is that it ends up being what is it? Ross. It may very well end up being Ross. The only reason being, and my theory that I went into, is that with all the players that we have from the cinematic films as well as from the TV shows, it seems like we're seeing all these accumulations of pieces being placed on a chessboard for people to form certain teams that we've seen, you know, in the comics, whether it's Young Avengers. You know, we have, you know, Isaiah's grandson. It may end up being that actor. Maybe it won't. You know, he may end up being, you know, one of those characters from Young Avengers. We already have Wiccan and Speed at this point. They are canon. They could always bring them back. You know, they had Miss Marvel coming. They have Riri Williams on the way. I mean, they have Stature coming as well. So, I mean, you have that. But even with everything that's gone on with the Avengers films, in terms of where Ross's thought process is, perhaps based on those 5 years that, you know, everyone was dusted away. I mean, we saw a similar situation of it when WandaVision. I'm brain farting on the guy's name who was the antagonist, but you know, it seemed like those 5 years were really traumatic for him, and it really caused him to go off the deep end and really go to an extreme in terms of how he wanted to, kind of in the same way that we saw with Tony Stark, and you know, him going to an extreme of trying to protect the world. So maybe in his own twisted thought process, you know, with him needing to be in control, yet still having kind of that government overtone, that he is in essence accumulating his team. So I know, like in the comics, we have Thunderbolts, but again, going to MCU, a lot of times they'll simplify things. So maybe they may try to simplify it and just call them Dark Avengers, since we don't have, you know, Norman, since we don't have Osborn really. So
I would love, with Baron Zemo being such a big part of it, I would love to see, you know, like Thunderbolts, like old school Thunderbolts, because like he started the Thunderbolts, right? Like,
yeah, if I remember,
yeah. So he was Citizen V. That was like his fake name, and I loved that. I loved that book when it first came out. That was like, was that like during the Heroes? That was during the Heroes Were Born, I think. And then since Heroes Were Born happened, and then there weren't, so in the, you know, the Marvel universe, the Avengers and Fantastic Four were just gone. So they created the Thunderbolts as sort of like a replacement super group, and nobody knew they were like bad guys in disguise, which I love that book.
Right. So yeah, no, like for sure. Again, I may be wrong. Take it with a grain of salt, everyone, but it would be super awesome, because I will definitely claim it if I end up being right. The other thing that will be interesting to see, because it looks like they're trying to push it in that direction, is perhaps they may try to do, well, two things, and both of them actually regard Bucky. So, you know, up to this point, at least when we first get introduced to Bucky, it seems like he's very much, you know, alone and doesn't really have anyone. And I feel like they may try to use this series to give him a significant other. So it on what I saw in terms of the vibe, might be Sharon Carter. Because they may try to mirror that relationship of a, you know, a quote unquote super soldier with Carters, because Carters seem to have things for super soldiers, I guess. So, you know, they may try to do something like that. And then in the same regard, because I was thinking about it in what they did in the first episode, and that introduction of Torres, who, you know, we know in the comics, I don't know if they'll do it, but he eventually becomes the new Falcon. With the introduction of that character, you know, it made me think of, okay, what are they going to do with Bucky now, if they in essence already are lining up a sidekick already for Sam? And based on what happened at the end of this episode, it makes me think, because they allude to it, you know, in episode 2, when they had him and Sam had that argument. You're like, oh, look at you were in Wakanda for a little bit, and now you're White Panther, and he's like, no, I'm White Wolf.
That was hilarious.
That was such a hilarious moment, that they may double down on that White Wolf thing. And the only reason why I say that is, you know, but a lot of I know in the past, like when it's come, another thing Marvel has done is, while they have like a general path of where they want to go, sometimes things get thrown in, or situations happen where they'll tweak things here and there along that path. Like one thing that comes to mind for me is like Spider-Man, where they weren't expecting to get Spider-Man back, and they already kind of had a path of where they wanted to go, and then once they got him, they kind of had to re-gear the entire phase of films that they did. So with, unfortunately, the passing of Chadwick Boseman and figuring out what they're going to do with Black Panther, they may try to, because that's what they've been doing with a lot of those solo films, is kind of amping it with another character. And instead of like just having one character, they'll put another pair of a superhero in there to make it interesting, to mix things up. They may put Bucky in there, and they may have him as White Wolf, which they may perhaps weren't going to do, as I said, if Boseman was still around. But now that they're trying to figure out what to do with that film, they may try to bring him into the fold to do that character. Because now you're giving him a unique role onto himself, where he has another alias that gives him, a purpose and takes away the baggage of being Winter Soldier in essence.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what they're going to do in that movie. Oh man. Like,
I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous of, the pressure of what they need to figure out to, to replace Boseman. So.
Because they can't replace him. Oh man.
Exactly.
That's, they can't replace him, but they've got to do something. And I feel like they can't make it like a tribute show movie. Like that's not going to work. They got to figure out a way to make it, sort of a tribute without, and still put a real story together that everybody's invested in.
Heavy-handed.
And so that's, that's not easy. I have no idea what they're going to do. I have no predictions on that. I don't even know what I would do if I had it. It's just, if it was, my call, I have no idea. It's just such a horrible situation to be in. I mean, it's sad for so many reasons. And then just, real life just gets in the way. Like these, real life gets in the way of superheroes, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. So with that being said, as I said, I gave some theories of what I think might be on the way, but are there any other, crazy, insane theories that you have been, pondering, Ben, that may come to fruition, or maybe, you're just pulling for straws, but it may still happen. You never know.
So I saw like, I see these guys with the super soldier serum, the flag smashers. I feel like that's going to be a really big deal at some point. And I was looking at one of the actor who plays, I can't remember. He's the one that I can't remember there's so many characters in the show. When they're the two flag smashers are talking, and it's the man. He's like,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So like, I guess when he was first cast, there were people that were like, oh, is this guy going to be Omega Red or something? I'm like, what? Like, I don't know where, I have no idea where that would come in, but like, that would be freaking insane. And they could do that without like even incorporating the X-Men, or they could like do that as a way to kind of start getting into like mutant stuff. But Omega Red as a character doesn't necessarily have to be X-Men universe if they don't want it to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I have heard that theory too. I haven't heard that it was that particular guy. I do remember when
I think when they first cast him, people were saying that it might be him. But I think at this point, I don't think it is. But like, I don't know. Like that would be nuts. I like the kind of like, I like the idea that they're just faking people out on the X-Men stuff over and over with like Pietro, and they can just keep throwing us like little like little breadcrumbs of X-Men that never,
Come to fruition.
yeah, like I could, I live for that stuff. So when he showed up in WandaVision, I was like, my jaw hit the floor. I was, and so anything else they do like that is just going to be amazing. But like, I feel like Omega Red's like one of those types of characters where it's very much in the X-Men universe, but doesn't have to be. Yeah, it's Captain America could fight Omega Red, right? Like no reason not that he couldn't. So and it's not like that. I don't think the character was ever in any of the X-Men movies.
He was in Deadpool, but if I recall, yeah, he was in Deadpool too. He was like in the prison scene. I think they showed him for like a second.
Okay, but he wasn't like okay.
No, it wasn't like substantial enough where you're like, oh my gosh, Omega Red. Yeah, no, it was like a quick cameo, like blink if you miss it. But and if I recall, like I have to look at it again. I want to say that it may have been a cut scene. You guys can tell me out there. Like I feel like it might have been a cut scene, but he was supposed to be in it as a cameo in that prison scene. But no, I definitely that would be cool. And as I said, like going back to what MCU does, sometimes they go along with exactly what they have inspired from their books, and sometimes they go a different route, just for the sake of the story that they have in that film or in that show. And I mean, the president's has already been set. I mean, you could just say that he's one of those Roman numeral super soldiers. I mean, you already have Captain America as Roman numeral 1, and they could just say, oh, he's, weapon 5 or weapon 6. If I remember, I want to say Abomination was weapon 6. I have to look at Incredible Hulk again, because I think they showed it on his when they were pulling out the serum of what phase it was. I want to say he was 6, so maybe 8 or 9, which means that Wolverine is not that far behind, being 10. So we will see for sure. But other than that, Ben, I'm gonna close it off right there. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you coming on and talking about episode 3, man. Before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Ben Penrod _. I've got a bunch of cons coming up this year. Fingers crossed everything goes well. I'm just looking at my calendar. I've got June 12th and 13th. I've got Central Florida Comic Con in Lakeland, Florida. I've got Alaska Comic Con on July 31st and August 1st in Fairbanks, Alaska. August 20th through 22nd, Awesome Con in DC. September 24th through 26th, I've got StarCon in Orlando. I got the Southern Maryland Comic Con November 13th, which I haven't announced yet, but I'll have tickets up for that soon. And then I've got a super secret project in October that I can't talk about yet, but keep an eye out.
Will do.
Hopefully a busy year. We can get, everybody get vaccinated, and we can get on with our lives and start, meeting people in person again.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Well, there you guys have it. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Debrief, the Falcon and Winter Soldiers chat for episode 3. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movies and Shakers Unlimited, which you see down below. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Troy ENT, on Instagram at Brandon Troy _ENT. And of course, you can find us over on Twitter at Move and Shake UNLTD, on Instagram at Mover Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Be safe out there, and I will see you soon.
All right, thanks a lot.
Bye.